I've joined a trade union as soon as I left school, as soon as I started my job. One, because my family members have always been members of trade unions. But more importantly, I believe that workers should be fighting for one another. I should be fighting with the man beside me, and the woman beside me should be fighting for me. Because if we don't, then the workers have no power. The managers have all the power in their hands, and there's very little that we can do about it. Unless, of course, you're part of a trade union.
I joined a trade union straight after school when I went into my first job in a care home, because I was doing a lot of kind of odd jobs, a lot of precarious work, and I just knew that I wanted to have protection, and I knew that I'd be able to protect my rights as part of a collective more so than an individual, especially being a young person where quite often you can be taken advantage of and exploited.
The reason why I would join a trade union is I think everybody should join a trade union. I think a lot of people have viewed trade unions as some sort of insurance policy, but actually it's the collective representation of workers within a workplace.
My reasons for joining the union were because by myself my voice wouldn't get heard both in the workplace and wider society. We need to work together collectively, so all our voices together make a very loud voice indeed, and our voices will be heard.
When I started working for Royal Mail, I was asked if I would like to join the trade union, and honestly I'd never had any dealings with a trade union before. I knew very little about trade unions. I knew of them, but they just weren't on my radar. I hadn't ever worked in a unionised environment before. Was approached to join the trade union at Royal Mail and said yes, and I have never looked back. I could not be prouder to be a trade union activist and member now.
I joined a union because I felt it was the best way to change my workplace for the better and also build a better society as well.
So I was always brought up to think I would join a trade union, and I did join a trade union whenever I started work.
I felt it would be support for me in the workplace. Family had always been in the union, so I was aware of unions and the support that you could get, and I felt it would be good to be part of a community and know that there would be support there if I needed it.
The reason I joined the trade union is because I knew that my rights would be better protected as part of a collective than as an individual.
I joined fairly early on in joining work as well. And I think my dad had always been part of the union.
I left school at 16, and as I say, I worked for an engineering company. They took us a tour of the plant as part of our induction. It was quite intimidating. Huge machinery, cranes, welding going on, sparks flying everywhere, and you kind of rock back in your heels a wee bit. Thankfully, as part of the induction process at that time, the trade unions who operated in the factory employed about 1,000 people. They got the chance to speak to the new recruits and new apprentices, as we were at the time. And they explained not only that they looked after our pay, our hours of duty, our shift systems, our holidays, but they also made sure that we weren't just going to be used as cheap labour, but we'd get real meaningful training, and that they'd negotiate a deal where we would actually attend college as part of that for a period each week.
I joined Unison last year because the school that I was working for at the time was really mistreating me, and everybody really encouraged me to finally join.
A success story that really inspired me was the Value Education, Value Teachers campaign in 2018, 2019. Although the teachers didn't end up striking, they did win like a significant pay rise, which was through consistently protesting and consistent action from the teachers, the main teachers union EIS, which led on the campaign, but also the smaller teachers union.
I was involved in organising teachers around employment, so that was about the disparity of employment. That was very successful in that we mobilised 800 teachers. We managed to secure funding for every council, and we raised awareness of a flaw in the system that has been a flaw in the system for a very long time.
When I was a bit younger, I was involved in a few street campaigns in Dundee, and it was at that time that I first heard of Better Than Zero. And Better Than Zero was a campaign that focused on precarious work and those in sort of casualised employment. And as soon as I engaged with the Better Than Zero campaign, I realised that the whole host of different ways that you can campaign or organise within your workplace and push for better conditions for you and your fellow workers.
One of the things trade unions do really well is campaigning on issues around, globally on a large scale, we look at human rights issues, we look at humanitarian aid issues. More locally within the UK, we look at social justice within our own country. The Communication Workers Union that I work for have had some fantastic success in actually changing legislation on issues like the dangerous dog legislation. We work with postal workers and we've had a very successful campaign where we managed to get the legislation changed, which provides extra protection to postal workers in the UK.
There are a number of success stories, things that Unison has achieved. I suppose the most obvious one that got the most publicity recently has been the Equal Pay campaign in Glasgow, where women who were very low paid got equal pay with men, for some of them life-changing sums. That was a great example of collectivism, particularly for women.
One of my proudest moments at being part of a trade union included when my branch negotiated the adoption of the Ethical Care Charter with the employer. I also enjoyed being involved with Grampian Pride because I felt that it showed the local community how diverse Unison is as a trade union.
It's proven that how strong trade unions can be when in just only 4 or 5 years ago, in my workplace, colleagues of mine who work on the trains, ScotRail wanted to get rid of the role of conductors on the trains and ticket examiners. So my colleagues at the station went on strike, and then ScotRail got rid of that idea, in essence keeping hundreds of people in work. And that proves the strength of being in a trade union.
I think trade unions are an amazing success story because trade unions have delivered all the benefits that we enjoy both in the workplace, in terms of proper contracts, in terms of conditions, holiday pay, sick pay and equal rights, but also in terms of a wider society for things like the NHS, which people have tended to take for granted until now. And now the COVID crisis actually illustrates how much we need the NHS.
Definitely say to any young person who is starting work for the first time to not be afraid to ask and find out about union and about help and support.
If I was to say one thing to people leaving school and entering employment right now, it would be to not be afraid of asking for basic things like your contract, your pay slips. These are all very basic things that you're completely legally entitled to.
Make sure you speak to your colleagues about whether there's a trade union recognised in your workplace, and look to find out whether you can become a member of a trade union yourself.
There's a lot of precarious work out there at the moment, and it's really important to know what your rights are within that, if that's the way that you go.
People need to be in a trade union to make their voices heard, and together, collectively, we can do that. Whether it's fighting for terms and conditions, pay, decent contracts within our workplaces, or whether it's in wider society stopping the NHS being privatised, or people being expected to work in extremely dodgy situations in terms of health and safety during the current virus crisis.
Another benefit of being in the unions is that you get access to discounts and also access to some really good training in the workplace if you're part of the union. And I think like you're just saying there, Fiona, it's important that you know you do have rights, especially for young people who might not feel that they can speak up because they're just starting work. So yeah, definitely to look out for your union rep and find out what support's available.
Particularly now for young people, it's important to understand what is your contract, what is your rights, and to really seek advice from a union, join a union.
I remember when I was young and started out, I wasn't aware of my rights around pay, my rights around time off, my rights around overtime. There were so many issues that I didn't have my rights upheld on because I wasn't aware of them. And it's quite a minefield of information, really, negotiating understanding what your rights are in employment law is very complicated, and employers will always have the upper hand on you on that. Having a trade union means that you have somebody looking out for your rights.